The dust devil spun across Main Street just as Nora Bennett watched her younger sister Violet walk out of the general store wearing her engagement ring, arm in arm with the man who had promised to marry Nora come springtime. Rhyolite, Nevada in the summer of 1907 was a boom town built on silver and dreams. But for Nora, watching through the window of her family's modest boarding house, it felt like the whole world was crumbling to ash. She pressed her palm against the sun-warmed glass, her breath catching in her throat as Marcus Whitley leaned down to kiss Violet's cheek right there in broad daylight. The same lips that had whispered promises to Nora just 3 months ago. The same hands that had held hers while they talked about the little ranch they would buy together, the children they would raise, the life they would build. "You are still staring," her mother said from behind her, voice flat and resigned. "It will not change anything." Nora turned away from the window, blinking back the tears that threatened to spill. "How could she do this, Mama? How could Violet take him from me?" Her mother set down the linens she had been folding and sighed, the sound heavy with something that might have been sympathy if exhaustion had not already claimed most of her emotional reserves. "Your sister has always been the prettier one, the charming one." Marcus made his choice. "A man cannot be stolen if he does not wish to go." The words struck harder than any slap. Nora knew her mother meant them as comfort somehow, as acceptance of unchangeable facts, but they only made the hollow ache in her chest grow wider. She was 22 years old, plain-faced and practical, with brown hair that never held a curl and hands roughened from years of hard work, keeping the boarding house running. Violet was 19, golden-haired and delicate, with a laugh like wind chimes and a way of looking at men that made them forget their own names. It was not just Marcus that Violet had taken, though that betrayal cut the deepest. Over the past 2 months, Violet had systematically claimed everything Nora held dear. The pearl necklace their grandmother had left specifically to Nora in her will. Violet had cried and pleaded until Nora relented and let her wear it to a dance. It never found its way back to Nora's jewelry box. The small savings Nora had been setting aside from her work at the boarding house. Their father had needed it for an emergency, he said. But somehow Violet ended up with 3 new dresses and a fancy hat from San Francisco. The friends Nora had cultivated, the few young women in town who gathered for quilting circles and shared confidences. Violet had charmed her way into their center, and now when Nora arrived, the conversations felt strained, the laughter forced. But Marcus had been the final theft, the one that broke something fundamental inside Nora's heart. She left her mother folding linens and climbed the narrow stairs to the attic room she shared with her sister. Violet's side of the space overflowed with fripperies and finery, while Nora's held only what was necessary. She sat on her narrow bed and let herself cry for exactly 5 minutes, timing it by the clock on the dresser. Then she washed her face in the basin, braided her hair with steady hands, and made a decision. She could not stay here and watch Violet marry the man she loved. She could not serve them breakfast in the boarding house dining room and pretend her heart was not shattered. She could not become the pitied spinster sister, forever in Violet's shadow, forever reminded of everything she had lost. Nora pulled her carpetbag from under the bed and began to pack. She owned little enough that it took less than 20 minutes to gather everything that mattered. She left behind the dresses Violet had borrowed and stretched out, the books with pages torn out, the hand mirror with the crack down the middle. She took only what was completely, undeniably hers. The sun was beginning its descent toward the western hills when Nora slipped out the back door of the boarding house. She had left a note for her parents, brief and apologetic, saying only that she needed to find her own way and they should not worry. She knew Violet would read it too, and she hoped her sister felt something, anything, even if it was just mild inconvenience at having to do more chores. Rhyolite's streets were still busy, with miners finishing their shifts and businessmen closing up shops. Nora kept her head down and walked with purpose toward the edge of town, where a smaller trail branched off from the main road leading to Beatty. She had no clear destination in mind, only the bone-deep need to be anywhere but here. She had made it perhaps 2 miles out of town when the sound of hoofbeats made her step to the side of the road. The rider who came into view was leading a pack mule loaded with supplies, and as he drew closer, Nora recognized him as one of the men who occasionally stayed at her family's boarding house. Tall and lean, probably in his late 20s, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of creek water after rain. He wore his hat low and his expression lower, the kind of man who seemed more comfortable with silence than speech. He reined in his horse when he saw her, looking from her face to the carpetbag in her hand and back again. "Miss Bennett, Mr. Thompson," she replied, searching her memory for his first name. Patrick, she thought, or maybe Preston. He always paid his boarding house bills in cash and never caused trouble, which made him essentially invisible in her mother's eyes. "You are heading out of town," he observed. It was not quite a question. "I am." Nora lifted her chin, daring him to tell her it was foolish, that a woman alone on the road was asking for trouble, that she should turn around and go back to her proper place. Instead, Preston Thompson studied her for a long moment, and something that might have been understanding flickered across his weathered features. "The last stage through already left. Next one will not come until Wednesday." "I know." She had missed it deliberately, unable to face the questions and gossip that would have spread through the stage passengers like wildfire. Everyone in Rhyolite knew about Marcus and Violet by now. Everyone pitied poor, plain Nora. Preston shifted in his saddle, leather creaking. "There is a ranch about 12 miles north of here. The widow who owns it has been looking for help, wrote to the boarding house about it last month." Nora remembered the letter. Her mother had thrown it away, saying no daughter of hers would work as common ranch help when they had a perfectly respectable business in town. But Nora was no longer planning to be her mother's daughter in any way that mattered. "You know how to get there?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "I am heading that direction myself. Got a claim up in the hills beyond the widow's spread." He paused, seeming to weigh his words carefully. "You could ride the mule if you wanted. Save your feet." It was the kindest offer anyone had made her in months, and Nora found her throat tight as she accepted. Preston dismounted and helped her secure her carpetbag to the mule's pack, then gave her a leg up onto the animal's broad back. He remounted his own horse and they started north, leaving Rhyolite and all its broken promises behind. They rode in silence for the first hour, the desert spreading vast and painted in shades of rust and gold around them. The Amargosa Range rose purple in the distance, and somewhere out there Nora thought there had to be a place where she could start over, a place where no one knew her as the sister who lost everything. "I am sorry," Preston said suddenly, his voice rough from disuse. "About Marcus Whitley." Nora stiffened. "You heard about that?" "Whole town heard. Hard not to." He kept his eyes on the trail ahead. "For what it is worth, I never thought much of him anyway. Man who changes his mind about a woman like that has no integrity." "My sister is very beautiful," Nora said, hating how defensive she sounded. "So is a rattlesnake if you catch it in the right light," Preston replied. "Still has poison in its bite." Despite everything, Nora felt a surprised laugh bubble up from her chest. It was small and slightly bitter, but it was real. "That is a terrible thing to say about someone you barely know." "I know enough." Preston finally glanced at her, and his expression was serious. "I have been boarding at your place for 6 months now, Miss Bennett. I have watched how hard you work, how you manage everything while your sister floats around taking credit. I have seen you make sure every guest is comfortable, every meal is perfect, every problem is solved before anyone else even notices it exists. That takes strength. Real strength, not the decorative kind." Nora did not know what to say to that. No one had ever noticed her work before, let alone praised it. She had always been the invisible Bennett sister, the one who kept things running while Violet sparkled. "Thank you," she managed finally. "That is kind of you to say. It is true." Preston turned his attention back to the trail. "Your sister took everything from you, I reckon. Your belongings, your friends, your intended husband. But she did not take anything worth having, Miss Bennett. She just took things that looked pretty from the outside." The words settled over Nora like a blanket, warm and unexpected. She wanted to believe them, wanted to think that Marcus and the pearls and all the rest were not truly losses but burdens shed. It was too soon for that kind of acceptance, though. The wounds were too fresh, the ache too deep. As the sun sank lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Preston led them to a small creek that cut through the desert landscape. "We will camp here tonight," he said. "The widow's ranch is still 8 miles north, and it is not safe to travel in full dark." Nora had never camped outdoors before, but she refused to be helpless. While Preston tended to the animals, she gathered sagebrush and dried wood for a fire. He watched her work with quiet approval, then showed her how to arrange the fuel for maximum efficiency. Together they built a small fire, and Preston cooked a simple meal of beans and cornbread from his supplies. It was plain food, nothing like the elaborate dinners she used to prepare at the boarding house, but sitting under the vast desert sky with the stars beginning to emerge overhead, Nora thought it tasted better than anything she had eaten in months. "Why are you helping me?" she asked as they finished eating. "You do not owe me anything." Preston poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks spiraling up into the darkness. "My mother died when I was 14, he said quietly. "Left me and my father alone on our ranch down in Arizona. My father remarried within 6 months. New wife was young, pretty, full of charm. Spent 3 years running through every cent we had, every bit of work my mother had put into that place. By the time my father died, there was nothing left but debt. She took the insurance money and ran off with a traveling salesman, left me to sort out the mess." He was quiet for a moment, and Nora waited, sensing there was more. "I rebuilt," Preston continued. "Took me 5 years of hard labor, working other people's ranches, saving every penny. Finally got enough together to come up here, try my hand at prospecting. Got a decent claim, looks promising." He looked at her then, his eyes reflecting the firelight. "Point is, I know what it is like to watch someone take everything you thought was yours. And I know what it is like to have to start over from nothing. So when I see someone else in that situation, I figure the least I can do is offer a hand up." Nora felt something shift in her chest, a loosening of the tight knot of pain that had lived there for weeks. "I am grateful," she said. "Truly." "You will be all right, Miss Bennett," Preston said with quiet certainty. "You are stronger than you think." They settled into their bedrolls on opposite sides of the fire, proper and respectful. Nora lay awake for a long time, listening to the night sounds of the desert and thinking about strength, about starting over, about the strange kindness of a near stranger who saw value in her, when everyone else had looked past her to her prettier sister. Morning came with the sharp clarity of desert light, and they broke camp efficiently. Preston had clearly done this hundreds of times, and Nora paid attention to how he moved, how he packed, storing the knowledge away for whatever future lay ahead of her. They reached the widow's ranch by late morning, and Nora felt her breath catch at the sight of it. The ranch house was small but well maintained, with a wide porch and shutters painted a cheerful blue. Corrals held a dozen horses, and several outbuildings suggested a working operation. A woman emerged from the house as they approached, probably in her 50s, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a practical bun and eyes that missed nothing. "Preston Thompson," the woman called. "You are a sight for sore eyes, and you have brought a friend, Mrs. Adelaide Farmer. This is Miss Nora Bennett from Rhyolite," Preston said, dismounting. "She is looking for work, and I recalled you mentioning you needed help around the place." Adelaide's sharp eyes assessed Nora thoroughly. "Bennett, you are Ruth Bennett's daughter from the boarding house." "Yes, madam." Nora slid down from the mule, her legs stiff from riding. "My older daughter, not the younger." Something flickered in Adelaide's expression, a knowing that suggested she understood the distinction and all it implied. "Can you cook?" "Yes, madam. I ran the kitchen at the boarding house for the past 4 years. Can you handle horses?" "I have not had much experience, but I am willing to learn." "Can you shoot?" Nora hesitated. "My father taught me the basics when I was young, but I am not practiced." Adelaide nodded, seeming satisfied. "I can teach you the rest. I have been running this ranch alone since my husband passed 2 years ago. I have good hands who manage the cattle and horses, but I need someone to help with the house, the cooking, the accounts. Someone with sense and work ethic." She paused. "I do not need another pretty face who cannot boil water. I need a partner." The word partner resonated through Nora like a bell. Not a servant, not a charity case, but a partner. "I am interested, madam." "It is hard work," Adelaide warned. "Long hours, rough conditions sometimes. But the pay is fair. You will have your own room, and I will teach you everything I know about running a ranch. When I eventually retire, I will need someone who can take over, maybe even buy me out if they have the ambition." It was more than a job. It was an opportunity, a future, a chance to build something of her own. Nora felt tears prick at her eyes, but she blinked them back. "I will work harder than anyone you have ever hired, Mrs. Farmer. I promise you that." Adelaide smiled, the expression transforming her weathered face. "I believe you will. Welcome to the Broken Spur Ranch, Miss Bennett." She glanced at Preston. "Stay for lunch, Thompson. Least I can do for bringing me exactly what I needed." Over a meal of roast chicken and vegetables from Adelaide's garden, Nora learned more about the ranch and her new employer. Adelaide had married young, come west with her husband 40 years ago when Nevada was barely settled. They had built the Broken Spur from nothing, survived droughts and hard winters and market crashes. When her husband died of a heart ailment, everyone expected Adelaide to sell and move back east to live with her daughter's family. Instead, she had hired good men, learned to manage the business side herself, and kept the ranch running. "I admire that," Nora said quietly. "That's strength." "It was not strength," Adelaide corrected. "It was necessity, but necessity has a way of teaching you what you are capable of." She studied Nora with those keen eyes. "Preston told me a little about your situation while you were washing up. Your sister sounds like a piece of work." Nora felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I would rather not be an object of pity, madam." "Pity," Adelaide snorted. "I do not pity you, girl. I admire you for having the spine to walk away. Most women would have stayed, made themselves small and miserable, convinced themselves they had no other choice. You chose differently. That takes courage." Preston, who had been eating silently, spoke up. "Miss Bennett will do well here, Adelaide. She has good instincts." The older woman nodded. "I can see that. We will get along fine." She turned to Nora. "Your sister took everything from you, I understand. Your belongings, your intended husband, your place in town. But here is what I have learned in 63 years of living, Miss Bennett. Things that can be taken were never really yours to begin with. The things that matter, the things that make you who you are, those cannot be stolen by anyone. It was almost exactly what Preston had said, phrased differently. Nora was beginning to wonder if perhaps they were right, if perhaps losing everything was actually a strange kind of freedom. Preston left after lunch, heading north toward his mining claim in the hills. Before he mounted his horse, he caught Nora's eye. "I come down this way every couple of weeks for supplies," he said. "I will check in, make sure you are settling in all right." "You do not have to do that," Nora protested, but without much conviction. "I know." He settled his hat on his head. "But I will anyway." She watched him ride away, dust rising from his horse's hooves, and felt an odd flutter of something in her chest. Anticipation, maybe, or the first fragile stirrings of something she was not quite ready to name. The first weeks at the Broken Spur passed in a blur of hard work and new learning. Adelaide ran the ranch with military efficiency, and she expected Nora to keep up. Mornings started before dawn with feeding chickens, gathering eggs, and preparing breakfast for the ranch hands. Then came the endless tasks of running a household, complicated by the fact that Adelaide insisted Nora also learn the outdoor work. "You cannot manage a ranch from the kitchen," Adelaide declared, handing Nora a pair of worn leather gloves. "You need to understand every aspect of the operation." So Nora learned to mend fences, doctor sick cattle, break green horses to saddle. Her hands blistered and then calloused. Her skin darkened from the sun despite her best efforts with her bonnet. Her muscles ached in places she had not known she had muscles. But she also grew stronger, more confident, more capable. The ranch hands were initially skeptical of having a woman learning their trade, but Nora won them over through sheer determination and willingness to tackle any job, no matter how unpleasant. By the end of her first month, even the gruffest old cowboy, a man named Dutch who had been with the Broken Spur for 20 years, admitted she had sand. Adelaide taught her to shoot, and Nora discovered she had a good eye once she practiced. They spent evenings on the porch, Adelaide handling the account books while Nora practiced her aim on tin cans set up in the yard. By late September, Nora could hit a target at 50 yards more often than not. "You might make a proper ranch woman yet," Adelaide said with approval. "Most city girls would have run home crying by now." "I do not have a home to run to," Nora replied, then paused. "Or rather, this is my home now." And it was true. The Broken Spur had become home in a way the boarding house in Rhyolite never had. Here her work was valued. Here she was building something for herself. Here, no one compared her unfavorably to a prettier, more charming sister. True to his word, Preston Thompson came by every 2 weeks or so, always with a reasonable excuse. He needed to borrow a tool, or he had extra meat from a deer he had shot, or he wanted Adelaide's advice on a business matter. But his eyes always found Nora first, and he always stayed long enough to hear how she was settling in. "Your claim doing well?" Adelaide asked him on one of these visits in early October. "Fair enough," Preston said, accepting a cup of coffee. "Silver vein is holding steady. Should be able to sell to the refinery in Goldfield come spring, make enough to expand the operation. You thinking of staying in Nevada long term?" Adelaide pressed. Preston glanced at Nora, who was kneading bread dough at the kitchen table. "I am thinking on it. Depends on a few factors." Nora felt her cheeks warm and focused intently on her work. Since that first night by the campfire, Preston had been unfailingly polite and respectful. But there was something in the way he looked at her sometimes that made her heart beat faster. She had tried to dismiss it as imagination, tried to tell herself she was too raw from Marcus's betrayal to trust her own feelings. But the truth was becoming harder to ignore. She liked Preston Thompson. Liked his quiet strength, his steady reliability, his dry sense of humor that emerged when he felt comfortable. Liked the way he treated her as an equal, never condescending, never patronizing. Liked the way he listened when she talked, really listened as if her words mattered. After Preston left that day, Adelaide gave Nora a knowing look. "That man is courting you, you realize." "He is not," Nora protested, her face flaming. "He is just being friendly. I have been on this earth more than 6 decades, girl. I know courting when I see it." Adelaide chuckled. "Question is, how do you feel about it?" Nora busied herself shaping the bread dough into loaves. "I do not know. It has only been 4 months since Marcus. Everyone would say it is too soon, that I am being foolish." "Everyone can mind their own business," Adelaide said tartly. "Marcus Whitley was never right for you anyway. Too soft, too easily swayed. A woman like you needs a partner, not a decoration." She paused. "Preston Thompson is a good man. Honest, hard-working, steady. Those qualities are worth more than poetry and flowers." "You sound like you are trying to marry me off," Nora said, but without heat. "I am trying to make sure you do not let fear stop you from being happy," Adelaide corrected. "Your sister took your first chance at love, crooked as it was. Do not let her steal your second one too, by making you too afraid to try again." The words stayed with Nora as autumn deepened, and the desert air turned crisp in the mornings. She found herself watching for Preston's visits, found herself taking extra care with her appearance on the days he might come by. She noticed things about him she had not seen before. The way his rare smile transformed his face, the gentleness in his hands when he helped with a difficult horse, the intelligence in his eyes when he and Adelaide discussed ranch management and mining operations. In early November, Preston arrived with news. "I am heading into Goldfield for supplies and to file some additional claim paperwork," he told Adelaide. "Thought I might swing through Rhyolite on the way, see if any mail has come for me at the boarding house." Nora's stomach dropped. She had not thought about Rhyolite in weeks, had successfully pushed thoughts of Marcus and Violet to the back of her mind. Now it all came rushing back. "I do not suppose you have heard any news from town?" she asked, trying to sound casual. Preston's expression turned carefully neutral. "I heard Marcus Whitley and your sister got married last month. Quick ceremony, no big celebration." It should have hurt more than it did. Nora waited for the familiar ache, the sharp pain of betrayal, but all she felt was a distant sadness, like remembering an injury that had long since healed. "I hope they are happy," she said, and was surprised to find she meant it, at least partly. She hoped Marcus was happy because it meant he would stay with Violet and leave Nora's new life undisturbed. "Your mother asked me to pass along that she misses you," Preston added gently. "Your father, too. They would like to see you sometime." Nora nodded slowly. She had sent 2 letters since leaving Rhyolite, brief notes assuring her parents she was safe and employed. They had not written back, and she had not expected them to. Her leaving had probably embarrassed them in front of the whole town. "Maybe in the spring," she said, "when enough time has passed." Preston looked like he wanted to say something else, but Adelaide interrupted. "While you are in Goldfield, Thompson, pick up those supplies I ordered from the feed store. I will give you the money." "No need," Preston said. "Consider it payment for all the meals and coffee I have taken from you." "You are a good man, Preston Thompson," Adelaide said firmly. "Any woman would be lucky to have you." The look Preston shot Nora was so full of hope and longing that she had to turn away, her heart pounding. When he left an hour later, he caught her alone by the horse corral. "Miss Bennett," he said formally. "Nora, if I may be so bold." "You may," she whispered. "I have been thinking." He took off his hat, turning it in his hands. "I know it has not been long since your situation in Rhyolite. I know you probably need time, and I am willing to give you that. But I want you to know my intentions. I am courting you, or trying to, if you will let me. Not to replace what you lost, but because I have come to admire you greatly. Your strength, your determination, your kindness despite everything you have been through. You are a remarkable woman, Nora Bennett, and I would be honored if you would consider allowing me to call on you properly. Nora's throat was tight with emotion. This was nothing like Marcus's courtship, which had been all flowery words and grand gestures that ultimately meant nothing. Preston was offering something real, something solid and true. I would like that, she managed. Very much. The smile that broke across Preston's face was like sunrise. He took her hand, calloused palm against calloused palm, and squeezed gently. Then I will be back as soon as I can. And maybe next time, if Adelaide can spare you for an afternoon, we could take a ride together. There is a place up in the hills I would like to show you. I would like that too, Nora said. After Preston left, Nora returned to the house to find Adelaide grinning like the cat who got the cream. Well, the older woman demanded. He is courting me, Nora said, unable to keep the smile from her face. Properly. About time, Adelaide said with satisfaction. I was beginning to think that boy would never get around to it. Now, let us make sure we have your Sunday dress cleaned and pressed for his next visit. The weeks that followed were the happiest Nora had known. Preston came by every few days now, no longer bothering with excuses. He brought her small gifts, a pretty stone from his claim, a book of poetry he thought she might enjoy, a harmonica he taught her to play. They took long rides through the desert, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about his childhood in Arizona, about his dreams of building a proper ranch someday, about the silver deposits in his claim that might make those dreams possible. She told him about growing up in Rhyolite, about the boarding house, about her complicated feelings toward her family. Do you think I am a bad person for not missing them more? She asked one day as they sat on a ridge overlooking the valley, their horses grazing nearby. Preston considered the question seriously, as he considered everything. I think you are a person who has been hurt by the people who should have protected you. I think you are allowed to take time to heal before you decide how much space to give them in your life. Violet wrote to me, Nora admitted. It was the first time she had spoken of the letter that had arrived last week. She said she is sorry things happened the way they did. She said she hopes I am well. Do you believe her? I do not know. Nora pulled her knees up, wrapping her arms around them. Part of me wants to believe she feels guilty, that she understands what she did was wrong. But another part of me thinks she just wants absolution, wants me to tell her it is all right so she can feel better about herself. What did you write back? Nothing yet. I do not know what to say. Preston was quiet for a moment, then said, Your sister took everything from you. Your belongings, your friends, the man you thought you loved. But she did not take anything worth having, Nora. Marcus Whitley was weak. Your friends were shallow. The belongings were just things. What she could not take was the part of you that matters, the core of who you are. And that part, the real you, is more valuable than anything she could ever steal. It was not the first time Preston had said something similar, but this time, Nora truly believed it. She could see now that losing everything had been a gift in disguise. It had forced her to leave Rhyolite, which had led her to the Broken Spur, which had led her to Adelaide and a new life and Preston himself. If Violet had not taken Marcus, Nora would have married him, would have spent her life trying to make a weak man happy, would never have discovered her own strength. Thank you, she said softly, for helping me see that. Preston reached over and took her hand. You would have seen it eventually on your own. You are too smart not to. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint the desert in shades of gold and amber. After a while, Preston said, My claim is doing better than I expected. The refinery in Goldfield is interested in a long-term contract. With that kind of steady income, I could start building. Maybe buy some land adjacent to my claim, run some cattle, build a proper house. Nora's heart began to beat faster. She knew what he was working up to, could feel it in the air between them. I know it has only been a few months since we met, Preston continued. I know it has not even been a year since Marcus. But I also know what I want, Nora. I want to build a life with you. I want to wake up every morning knowing you are beside me. I want to work hard all day and come home to you at night. I want to build something real and lasting, something no one can take away from either of us. He turned to face her fully, and his eyes were intense with emotion. I am not a fancy man. I cannot offer you a big house in town or an easy life. What I can offer is loyalty, honest work, and a love that will not waver. I can promise you that I will never betray you, never leave you, never make you feel like you are second best to anyone. Nora felt tears spill down her cheeks, but they were good tears, healing tears. Preston, you do not have to answer now, he said quickly. I know it is too soon. But I wanted you to know where my heart is, where it has been since that first day I saw you walking out of Rhyolite with your carpet bag and your courage. I am in love with you, Nora Bennett. And whenever you are ready, if you are ever ready, I will be waiting. Nora looked at this good, steady man who had shown her nothing but kindness and respect, who had seen her at her lowest point and helped her find her strength, who valued her for who she truly was, not for how she looked or how charming she could be, who loved her not despite her plainness, but because of the qualities that actually mattered. I do not need time, she said clearly. I know my answer, Preston. It is yes. For a moment he just stared at her, as if he could not quite believe what he had heard. Then he was pulling her into his arms, holding her tight, and Nora felt something settle into place in her chest. Some piece of herself she had not known was missing, clicking home. I love you too, she whispered against his shoulder. I think I have loved you since that first night by the campfire when you told me I was stronger than I thought. You saw me, Preston, really saw me, not the overlooked sister or the pitied woman or the hard worker. You saw me. Preston pulled back just enough to cup her face in his hands. I see you, Nora. I see your strength and your kindness and your fierce determination. I see the way you love with your whole heart even after it has been broken. I see all of you, and I love every part. When he kissed her, it was nothing like the chaste pecks Marcus used to give her. This was real and deep and full of promise. This was the kiss of a man who meant every word he said, who was offering not pretty lies but genuine commitment. Nora kissed him back with all the emotion she had been holding inside, all the hope and fear and love and gratitude. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Preston rested his forehead against hers. We will do this right, he said. Proper courtship, proper engagement, proper wedding. I want everyone to know you chose me freely, not as some rebound from Marcus, but because we are right for each other. How long? Nora asked, already impatient. Preston laughed, the sound rich and warm. How does spring sound? That gives me time to build us a house, gives you time to be sure this is what you want, gives us time to plan a life together properly. Spring, Nora agreed, but no longer. I have already lost enough time being with the wrong person. They rode back to the broken spur as the stars began to emerge, hands linked between their horses. Adelaide took one look at their faces and let out a whoop of joy. Finally. I was beginning to think you two would dance around each other forever. That evening, over a celebratory dinner of Adelaide's best roast beef and Nora's apple pie, they made plans. Preston would finalize his refinery contract and use the advance payment to buy the land and materials for a house. Nora would continue learning everything Adelaide could teach her about ranching. They would marry in April, right after the spring thaw made travel easier. "Where will you have the ceremony?" Adelaide asked. "Here, I hope. I have always wanted to host a wedding." Nora and Preston exchanged glances. "If you would not mind, Adelaide, we would be honored," Nora said. "Mind, I am delighted. We will invite everyone from the surrounding ranches, make it a real celebration." Adelaide paused, then asked gently, "Will you invite your family?" Nora had been dreading that question. "I do not know. Part of me wants them there, wants to show them I am happy, that I built a good life without them. But part of me thinks having them there, especially Violet, would just cast a shadow over the day." "It is your day," Preston said firmly. "Whatever you decide, I will support it." In the end, Nora wrote to her parents, informing them of her engagement and wedding plans. She kept the letter neutral and factual, neither warm nor cold. She did not write to Violet. Whatever relationship they once had was too damaged to repair quickly, if at all. Perhaps someday they would find a way to be civil, but Nora's wedding day was not the time to attempt reconciliation. Winter came to the Nevada desert, cold and clear. Preston worked on his claim when weather permitted and spent the worst days in his cabin planning the house he would build. He came down to the Broken Spur every week without fail, often staying overnight in the bunkhouse with the other ranch hands. Adelaide had strict rules about propriety, but she allowed Preston and Nora time together under her supervision, long evenings by the fire talking and planning. In January, Preston took Nora up to see the land he had bought, a beautiful stretch of valley with a creek running through it and good grass for cattle. "This is where I will build our house," he said, pointing to a slight rise that overlooked the water. "The barn will go there, the corrals over there. We will start small, but we can grow, build it into something real." Nora could see it all in her mind's eye, the ranch they would create together. "How long until the house is finished? If I can get started next month, should be ready by April." "Nothing fancy, just 2 rooms to start, but solid and warm. We can add on as we need to." "It sounds perfect," Nora said honestly. She did not need fancy, she needed real and lasting, and theirs. As winter turned toward spring, Nora helped Adelaide with the calving season, learning to assist with difficult births and care for newborn livestock. It was messy, exhausting work, but Nora loved it. She loved being part of the cycle of life, loved seeing the results of her labor in the healthy calves and satisfied mother cows. She was becoming a true ranch woman, and she was proud of it. In March, a letter arrived from Rhyolite. Nora recognized her mother's handwriting and opened it with trepidation. The contents were brief. Her parents would not be attending the wedding. It was too difficult to travel, the letter said, and the boarding house needed them. They wished her well, but made no mention of missing her or wanting to repair their relationship. There was a postscript in different handwriting that Nora recognized as Violet's. "I hope you will be very happy. I am sorry for everything." Nora read the letter twice, then folded it carefully and put it away in her dresser drawer. She felt oddly calm, not angry or hurt, just accepting. Her parents had made their choice just as she had made hers. Violet's apology was too little and too late, but at least it existed. Perhaps that was enough for now. "They are not coming?" Adelaide asked that evening. "No, but it is all right. You are more family to me than they ever were, Adelaide." The older woman's eyes grew suspiciously bright, and she pulled Nora into a fierce hug. "You are like the daughter I always wanted, girl, strong and capable and good all the way through. I am proud of you." Preston's reaction to the news was more visceral. "They should be here," he said angrily. "They should want to celebrate with you, should want to meet the man you are marrying, should want to be part of your life. But they do not," Nora said simply. "And I am learning to be all right with that. I have you, and I have Adelaide, and I have the life we are building. That is enough, Preston. More than enough. He pulled her close, and she could feel his heart beating against her cheek. You are right, he said finally, and they are fools for missing out on knowing the woman you have become. April arrived with wildflowers blooming across the desert and the creek running full with snowmelt from the mountains. Preston's house was finished, small but sturdy, with glass windows and a proper stone fireplace. He had built the furniture himself, simple pieces that would last. It was not much, but it was theirs, and Nora loved it immediately. The wedding was set for the third Saturday in April. Adelaide had invited everyone from the surrounding area, and preparations turned the broken spur into a hive of activity. Dutch and the other ranch hands built long tables in the yard for the reception feast. Nora and Adelaide cooked for days, preparing enough food to feed an army. One of the neighboring ranch wives was an excellent seamstress and helped Nora make a dress from cream-colored fabric Preston had brought back from Goldfield. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright, the sky an endless blue. Nora woke early, nerves and excitement making sleep impossible. Adelaide came in while she was getting dressed, carrying something wrapped in tissue paper. I want you to have this, the older woman said, unwrapping a beautiful lace veil. I wore it at my own wedding 40 years ago. It would mean a great deal to me if you wore it today. Nora felt tears threaten. Adelaide, I cannot. It is too precious. Which is exactly why I want you to have it. You are the daughter of my heart, Nora. Let me do this for you. So Nora wore Adelaide's veil, and Adelaide's wedding ring on a chain around her neck for luck, and felt more loved than she ever had in her parents' house in Rhyolite. As she walked out onto the porch where the ceremony would take place, she saw that dozens of people had gathered. Ranch families from all over the area, Preston's friends from his mining days, even a few people from the nearby town of Beatty who had heard about the wedding and wanted to attend. But Nora only had eyes for Preston, standing at the end of the makeshift aisle in his best suit, his hair neatly combed, his expression full of love and awe as he watched her approach. Dutch gave her away since she had no father present, and Nora appreciated the gruff cowboy's gentle handling of his role. The ceremony was performed by a traveling preacher who made a circuit of the isolated ranches. He spoke about love and commitment, about building a life together through hard work and dedication, about the sacred bond of marriage. When Preston said his vows, his voice was strong and clear. I promise to love you all the days of my life, Nora. To stand beside you through good times and hard times. To build a home with you where you will always feel valued and cherished. To see you, truly see you, every single day, and to thank God for the gift of you. Nora's own vows were equally heartfelt. I promise to love you with my whole heart, Preston. To work beside you in building our dreams. To be your partner in all things, through whatever challenges come. You saw me when I was invisible, valued me when I felt worthless, loved me when I thought I was unlovable. I promise to spend the rest of my life showing you that your faith in me was not misplaced. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Preston kissed her with such tenderness that Nora felt her heart might burst. The gathered crowd erupted in cheers and applause, and suddenly they were surrounded by well-wishers offering congratulations. The celebration that followed was joyous and boisterous. There was music and dancing, more food than anyone could eat, and toasts that ranged from heartfelt to humorous. Adelaide gave a speech that had everyone either crying or laughing, sometimes both, talking about how Nora had come to the broken spur broken-hearted and had blossomed into a woman of strength and capability. She came here thinking she had lost everything, Adelaide said, raising her glass. But what she found was herself, and in finding herself, she found the love she deserved. To Nora and Preston Thompson, may their life together be long and full of joy. As the sun set and the party continued around them, Preston pulled Nora aside. "Are you happy?" he asked softly. "I am more than happy," Nora replied. "I am home. For the first time in my life, I am truly home." They left the party eventually, riding together to their new house by moonlight. Preston carried Nora over the threshold, both of them laughing, and set her down gently in the middle of their front room. A fire was already burning in the fireplace, Adelaide's doing, and lamps cast a warm glow over everything. "Welcome home, Mrs. Thompson," Preston said. "I like the sound of that," Nora replied. "Mrs. Thompson, no longer the overlooked Bennett sister, but my own person with my own life." Preston cupped her face in his hands. "You were always your own person, Nora. You just needed the right circumstances to show it. But I am grateful every day that those circumstances brought you to me." Their wedding night was tender and passionate, a joining of two people who had found each other against all odds. Later, lying in Preston's arms in the bed he had built for them, Nora thought about the journey that had led her here. How Violet taking Marcus had seemed like the worst thing that could happen, but had actually been the best. How losing everything she thought she wanted had led her to discover what she actually needed. "What are you thinking about?" Preston asked, his fingers trailing through her unbound hair. "About how my sister took everything from me," Nora said. "And about how you told me she took nothing worth having." "You were right, Preston. Everything she took was just surface, just things that looked important but were not. What I have now, what we have together, this is real, this is worth having, and no one can ever take it away." Preston tightened his arms around her. "No one will ever take anything from you again, Nora, not while I am alive to prevent it. You are safe here, loved here, valued here. This is where you belong." And it was. As Nora drifted off to sleep that night, she felt a peace she had never known. The old hurts were not completely healed, might never be completely healed, but they no longer defined her. She was no longer Nora Bennett, the sister who lost everything. She was Nora Thompson, ranch wife and partner, beloved and valued, building a life that was entirely her own. The years that followed were full of hard work and simple joys. Preston's mining claim continued to produce steady income, enough that they could expand their ranch, buy more cattle, hire a few hands of their own. Nora worked alongside him in everything, proving herself as capable with accounts and breeding decisions as she was in the kitchen and garden. Their ranch became known throughout the region for the quality of their livestock and the fairness of their dealings. In the spring of 1909, Nora gave birth to their first child, a son they named Peter. He had Preston's dark hair and Nora's brown eyes, and he was healthy and strong from the start. Preston wept when he first held his son, overcome with emotion at the family they were creating together. "I never thought I would have this," he confessed to Nora as she recovered from the birth. "A wife I loved, a child, a home of our own. After my stepmother destroyed everything, I thought I would always be alone." "You are not alone," Nora assured him. "You will never be alone again." Adelaide was a frequent visitor and a doting grandmother figure to young Peter. She had sold a portion of the broken spur to a younger rancher but kept her house and a small herd, effectively semi-retiring. "I am getting too old for the hard work," she said. "But I will be around to teach this boy everything I taught his mother." True to her word, Adelaide spent hours with Peter as he grew, teaching him about animals and land management, filling his head with stories of the old days. Nora watched these interactions with deep gratitude, knowing her son was gaining the kind of family wisdom she had never received from her own relatives. 2 years later, Nora gave birth to twin girls, Nancy and Natalie. The ranch house was full of noise and laughter, and Nora sometimes had to pinch herself to believe this was really her life. She and Preston were partners in every sense, sharing work and decisions and the endless tasks of raising children and running a ranch. They did not hear from Nora's family in Rhyolite for years. Then in the fall of 1911, a letter arrived from Nora's mother. It was brief and formal, informing Nora that her father had died of pneumonia. The funeral had already taken place. The boarding house had been sold. Her mother was moving to California to live with a cousin. Violet and Marcus were still in Rhyolite, struggling financially. Marcus had gone through a series of failed business ventures, and they were barely getting by. Nora read the letter and felt only a distant sadness. She had mourned the loss of her father years ago, when he had failed to defend her against Violet's manipulations. This death was just a formality, the closing of a door that had already been shut. "You want to go to California, see your mother before she leaves Nevada?" Preston asked gently. Nora considered it, then shook her head. "No, she made it clear years ago that I was not her priority. I will not chase after people who do not want to be found." Preston nodded, understanding as always. "And Violet made her choices. She chose Marcus, chose the appearance of happiness over the reality. Now she is living with the consequences." Nora paused. "I do not wish her ill, Preston. I hope she finds some measure of contentment eventually, but I do not need to be part of her life to achieve that." As the years passed, the Thompson Ranch prospered. Preston's early mining income had given them the foundation to build something lasting, and their combined hard work and business acumen turned that foundation into a thriving operation. By 1915, they were one of the most successful ranches in the region, known for quality cattle and excellent horses. Their children grew strong and healthy. Peter showed a talent for handling horses, while the twins were opposites in personality but both fiercely intelligent. Nancy loved the business side of ranching, poring over accounts and breeding records, while Natalie preferred the outdoor work, following her father around the ranch and learning every aspect of cattle management. Adelaide passed away peacefully in her sleep in the winter of 1916. She was 73 and had lived to see the Thompson Ranch become everything she had hoped it would be. At her funeral, Nora spoke about the woman who had given her a second chance, who had seen her potential when she was at her lowest point, who had been more of a mother than her own had ever been. "She taught me that losing everything can be a beginning, not an ending," Nora said, tears streaming down her face. "She taught me that strength is not something you are born with, but something you discover when you have no other choice. She taught me that family is not just blood, but the people who choose to stand beside you through hard times. I would not be who I am today without Adelaide Farmer, and I will carry her lessons with me until my own last day." They buried Adelaide on a hill overlooking the broken spur, with a view of the desert she had loved. Preston carved her headstone himself, and Nora planted wildflowers around the grave that would bloom every spring. In 1918, the influenza epidemic that swept the world reached even their isolated corner of Nevada. Both Preston and Nora fell ill, as did Peter and Natalie. Nancy, by some miracle, remained healthy and nursed her family through the worst of it with the help of their ranch hands and neighbors. For 2 weeks, their survival was uncertain, but their strength and Nancy's dedicated care pulled them through. When they had all recovered enough to sit together as a family again, Preston gathered them on the porch and told the children what he had told Nora so many years before. "In times of crisis, you discover what really matters. Not money or possessions or reputation, but the people you love and who love you back. Your mother and I nearly lost everything to this disease, but we would have died rich because we had you three, and we had each other. Remember that. Always remember that. The children, sobered by how close they had come to losing their parents, nodded solemnly. And Nora, watching her family gathered around her, thought back to that day in Rhyolite when she had watched Violet walk away with Marcus. She had thought then that she had lost everything. She had not known she was actually on the verge of finding it. One summer day in 1920, a stranger arrived at the Thompson Ranch. She was thin and tired-looking, wearing a worn traveling dress and carrying a battered carpetbag. It took Nora a moment to recognize her own sister. "Violet," she said, shocked. "Hello, Nora." Violet looked older than her 32 years, with lines of hardship around her eyes and mouth. "I know I have no right to come here. I know I have no right to ask you for anything after what I did. But I did not know where else to go." Nora looked at her sister, this woman who had once taken everything from her, and felt no anger, no bitterness, only a weary kind of pity. "What happened?" "Marcus left me 6 months ago. Ran off with a saloon girl from Goldfield, took what little money we had left." Violet's voice was flat, emotionless. "I tried to make it work on my own in Rhyolite, but there is no work there anymore. The silver is mostly played out. The town is dying. I have nowhere to go, Nora. I was hoping maybe you might need help around here. I can work. I can earn my keep." It would have been so easy to turn her away, to tell Violet she was reaping what she had sown, that Nora owed her nothing. Preston would have supported that decision, would have sent Violet on her way with a few dollars, and not lost a moment's sleep over it. But Nora looked at her sister and saw not the golden, charming girl who had stolen her fiancé, but a broken woman who had learned hard lessons about the difference between surface beauty and real value. She saw someone who had lost everything, just as Nora once had. "You can stay," Nora said finally. "Not in the house, not yet. We have a small cabin for seasonal workers. You can stay there and you can help with the cooking and cleaning. You will work hard, Violet, harder than you have ever worked before, and you will not cause problems. If you can manage that, you can stay. If you cannot, you leave." Violet's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. I will work hard, I promise. I will earn this second chance." Preston was less welcoming when he heard. "Are you sure about this, Nora, after everything she did to you?" "I am sure," Nora said. "Not because I have forgiven her exactly. I am not sure I ever will completely. But because I remember what it felt like to lose everything, to feel like I had nowhere to go and no one who cared. Someone gave me a chance when I needed it most. Adelaide gave me a chance. Maybe I need to pass that gift forward." "You are a better person than I am," Preston said, but he kissed her forehead with approval. "All right, we will try it. But the moment she causes you any pain, she is gone." "Agreed, agreed." Violet proved true to her word. She worked hard at whatever tasks were assigned to her, never complaining even when the work was backbreaking. She was polite to Preston and kept her distance from the children until Nora specifically invited her to interact with them. She did not try to justify her past actions or make excuses. She simply worked and waited. After 6 months, Nora invited Violet to have dinner with the family. It was awkward at first, but the children's natural friendliness helped ease the tension. Peter, now nearly 12, asked Violet questions about Rhyolite and what it had been like when she and his mother were girls. Nancy wanted to know if Violet could teach her some of the fancy needlework she remembered from when they were young. Natalie was content just to have another adult to help with chores. After dinner, when the children were in bed, Nora and Violet sat on the porch while Preston worked on some tack that needed mending nearby. "I am sorry," Violet said quietly. It was the first time they had been alone together since her arrival. I know I said it in that letter years ago, but I do not know if you believed me. I am truly, deeply sorry for what I did to you, Nora. Marcus was not worth having. You were right about that, or Preston was right when he said it to you. I do not know which, but he was weak and vain and selfish, and I was foolish enough to think that because he was handsome and charming, he was enough. I was wrong. Nora listened, her hand still in her lap. I took everything from you, Violet continued. Your belongings, your place in the family, your fiancé. I was jealous, I think. Jealous that you were so capable, so strong, so good at everything you tried. I was only pretty, and I knew even then that pretty fades. So I tried to take what was yours because I thought it would make me feel more secure. All it did was make me miserable. Why? Nora asked. Why were you jealous of me? You were the favorite. Everyone loved you. Everyone loved what I looked like, Violet corrected. No one loved me. They loved my face, my charm, my ability to make them feel good about themselves. But when things got hard, when the money ran out and the looks started to fade, no one stayed. Marcus left. My friends disappeared. Mother moved to California and did not invite me to come along. I had nothing and no one because I had built my entire life on things that did not last. She turned to look at Nora directly. But you built your life on things that do last. Hard work, real relationships, genuine capability. You have Preston, who loves you for who you are. You have these beautiful children. You have this ranch that you built together. You have everything that matters, Nora. Everything I took from you was worthless. Everything you have now is priceless. Nora felt tears slip down her cheeks. She had waited 13 years to hear this acknowledgement, this admission. I am not going to say it is all right, she said. What you did hurt me terribly. It nearly broke me, I know. But it also saved me, Nora continued. Because losing everything forced me to leave Rhyolite, and leaving led me here. To Adelaide, to Preston, to this life. So in a strange way, your betrayal was the best thing that ever happened to me. I just wish it had not had to hurt so much. Can you ever forgive me? Violet asked hesitantly. Nora thought about it seriously. I do not know, maybe someday. For now I can offer you what you asked for, a place to stay, work to do, a chance to rebuild. That will have to be enough. It is more than enough, Violet said. It is more than I deserve. Over the next few years, Violet became a genuine part of the household. She never tried to reclaim her position as the charming sister or to compete with Nora in any way. Instead, she made herself useful, teaching the children things she remembered from their grandmother, helping with the endless tasks of running a large household, and gradually becoming someone Nora could rely on. The forgiveness came slowly, in small increments. A shared laugh over a mishap in the kitchen. Working side by side during a difficult calving. Violet staying up all night with Nancy when the girl came down with a fever, showing a tenderness Nora had not known her sister possessed. Gradually, the wounds began to heal, though the scars would always remain. In 1924, Violet met a widower at a church social in Beatty, a quiet man named John Crawford who ran a small freight business. He was not handsome or charming, but he was steady and kind, and he looked at Violet as if she was something precious. When he asked Violet to marry him 6 months later, she came to Nora for advice. You love him? Nora asked. I care for him deeply, Violet said. He is good and honest, and he treats me well. It is not the passionate romance I thought I wanted when I was young, but I think it might be better than that. I think it might be real. Then you should marry him, Nora said. Real is always better than passionate but false. Violet and John were married in a small ceremony at the Thompson Ranch, with Nora and Preston standing as witnesses. It was nothing like the elaborate wedding Violet had once planned with Marcus, but watching her sister exchange vows with this solid, dependable man, Nora thought it was infinitely better. As the years continued to pass, the Thompson Ranch became the center of their extended family. Peter married a schoolteacher from Beatty in 1928 and built a house on the property to raise his own family. Nancy studied business in Reno and came back to help manage the ranch's financial operations, modernizing their systems and expanding their markets. Natalie took over the day-to-day cattle management, proving to have an instinctive understanding of breeding and ranch operation that rivaled her father's. Preston and Nora grew older together, their love deepening with every shared challenge and triumph. They watched their children become adults, welcomed grandchildren, and continued to work the ranch they had built together. On their 20th wedding anniversary in 1929, Preston took Nora back to the ridge where he had first told her he loved her. "Do you remember this place?" he asked. "I remember," Nora said. "I remember you asking me to build a life with you. I remember being terrified and hopeful at the same time. I remember telling you that your sister took nothing worth having," Preston said. "I need you to know, Nora, that 20 years later, I believe that more strongly than ever. What we have built together, this life, this family, this love, is worth more than anything anyone could take from us. You are worth more than anything anyone could take from me." Nora leaned against her husband, her partner, her dearest love. "When Violet took everything, I thought my life was over. I did not know it was just beginning. I did not know that the best thing that ever happened to me was still ahead. The best thing that ever happened to me was seeing you walking out of Rhyolite with a carpetbag and determination," Preston said. "That was the day I started hoping, even though I did not let myself believe yet, that maybe I could have the life I wanted after all." They stood together watching the sunset paint the desert in colors of rose and gold, two people who had found each other in the aftermath of loss and built something beautiful from the ruins. Behind them, their ranch spread across the valley, a testament to hard work and genuine love. Their children and grandchildren were likely gathered at the house, waiting for them to return for the anniversary dinner. This was the life Nora had built, not despite losing everything but because of it. Violet had taken her belongings, her friends, her intended husband. But as Preston had said so long ago, she had taken nothing worth having. The things that truly mattered, the things that made a life rich and full, could not be stolen. They could only be built day by day, choice by choice, through dedication and honest work and real love. And standing there with Preston's arm around her shoulders, looking out over everything they had created together, Nora knew she had built well. She had lost everything and found everything, all because she had been brave enough to walk away and start over, all because a cowboy on the road had seen her value when she could not see it herself. "I love you," she said to Preston. "Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible. Thank you for showing me I was stronger than I knew. Thank you for building this life with me." "Thank you for letting me," Preston replied. "Thank you for taking a chance on a rough miner with more dreams than prospects. Thank you for being my partner in everything. Thank you for choosing me." As they walked back to the house hand in hand, Nora thought one final time about that day in Rhyolite when everything fell apart. She thought about watching Violet and Marcus through the window, about the pain and betrayal she had felt, about the certainty that her life was ruined. If she could go back and tell her younger self anything, it would be this: the worst day of your life is actually the first day of your real life. The woman who takes everything from you is actually giving you the greatest gift, even though neither of you knows it yet. And the cowboy who says she took nothing worth having is the man who will show you what worth really means. The house was full of light and laughter when they entered. 3 generations of family gathered to celebrate their love. Violet was there with John, content in her own quiet way, finally understanding the difference between what looked valuable and what was. Adelaide's portrait hung on the wall, the woman who had given Nora her chance watching over the family she had helped create. And Preston's hand was warm in Nora's as they stood in the doorway, taking in the sight of everyone they loved most in the world gathered under one roof. "Worth having," Preston murmured in her ear. "Worth everything," Nora replied, and it was.